Welcome to channel, Effortless English for Kids. Learn to speak English like a native. If you are new here, consider subscribing. Effortless English, Lesson 2. She saw a worm. The worm crawled on the ground. It crawled slowly. She watched it. She picked it up. It wiggled in her hand. She put it in her mouth. It wiggled in her mouth. She took it out of her mouth. She put it back on the ground. It crawled into a hole. Listen and answer. Did a worm crawl on the ground?
Yes, the worm crawled on the ground.
What crawled on the ground?
The worm crawled on the ground.
Where did the worm crawl?
The worm crawled on the ground.
Did it crawl slowly?
Yes, it crawled slowly.
What crawled slowly?
The worm crawled slowly.
How did it crawl?
It crawled slowly.
Did she watch it?
Yes, she watched it.
Who watched it?
She watched it.
What did she watch?
She watched the worm.
Did she pick it up?
Yes, she picked it up.
Who picked it up?
She picked it up.
What did she pick up?
She picked the worm up.
Did it wiggle in her hand?
Yes, it wiggled in her hand.
What wiggled in her hand?
The worm wiggled in her hand.
Where did it wiggle?
It wiggled in her hand.
Did she put it in her mouth?
Yes, she put it in her mouth.
Who put it in her mouth?
She put it in her mouth.
Where did she put it?
She put it in her mouth.
Did it wiggle in her mouth?
Yes, it wiggled in her mouth.
What wiggled in her mouth?
The worm wiggled in her mouth.
Where did it wiggle?
It wiggled in her mouth.
Did she take it out of her mouth?
Yes, she took it out of her mouth.
Who took it out of her mouth?
She took it out of her mouth.
Where did she take it out of?
She took it out of her mouth.
Did she put it back on the ground?
Yes, she put it back on the ground.
Who put it back on the ground?
She put it back on the ground.
Where did she put it?
She put it back on the ground.
Did it crawl into a hole?
Yes, it crawled into a hole.
What crawled into a hole?
The worm crawled into a hole.
Where did it crawl?
It crawled into a hole.
Listen and repeat. Yesterday. The worm crawled on the ground. It crawled slowly. She watched it. She picked it up. It wiggled in her hand. She put it in her mouth. It wiggled in her mouth. She took it out of her mouth. She put it back on the ground. It crawled into a hole. Today. The worm crawls on the ground. It crawls slowly. She watches it. She picks it up. It wiggles in her hand. She puts it in her mouth. It wiggles in her mouth. She takes it out of her mouth. She puts it back on the ground. It crawls into a hole. Tomorrow. The worm will crawl on the ground. It will crawl slowly. She will watch it. She will pick it up. It will wiggle in her hand. She will put it in her mouth. It will wiggle in her mouth. She will take it out of her mouth. She will put it back on the ground. It will crawl into a hole. Vocabulary. Listen and repeat.
Crawl.
Crawl.
Slowly.
Slowly.
Watch.
Watch.
Pick up.
Pick up.
Wiggle.
Wiggle.
Put in.
Put in.
Mouth.
Mouth.
Take out.
Take out.
Ground.
Ground.
Hole.
Hole. Question of the day. Do you like worms? Let me know in the comments below. Let your kid watch this video every day for at least 2 weeks. Thank you for watching. If you want to watch more videos, consider subscribing.
See you again. Bye bye.